They have proclaimed martial law in accordance with the powers vested in the President by the Constitution of the Philippines.
Many believed the 70s was a decade of the youth. They started it by taking over a university and holding it for 11 days. They launched rallies that challenged the state and shook it to its foundation. Many of the country's best and brightest gave up their lives for a social movement they believed would change Philippine society. Countless became heroes, many became martyrs. But it all started with the 10-centavo fuel price increase. It was when the youth took up people's issues and linked up with the workers and the masses that their movement gained currency. Bookish ideology matured into practical political action. A revolution was reborn. The state responded in kind. It declared martial law and ruled with an iron fist. Scores were abducted, and many more were unjustly arrested and detained. Many were summarily executed, and scores remain missing up to this day. While people were dying, brazen corruption in government made poverty among the people constant. It was an explosive mix that churned with ever-increasing rage.
Nung pumutok yung tinatawag natin ngayon na first quarter storm, reporter na ako noon, pero dahil bata akong reporter, parang minsan napagkakamalan din akong estudyante ng mga pulis. So nakita ko yung paano nga pinaglaban ng mga kabataan, yung kanilang mga karapatan at saka yung mga issues na pinaglalaban nila ng panahon yon, no? Laban sa imperialismo, feudalismo, burokratang kapitalismo. Malakas yung repression din, no? Yung sa mga rallies, hinahagisan ng tear gas, ang mga estudyante, pinabatuta. At the same time, sila naman umaganti ng babato, ng mga ano. Tuloy-tuloy naman yun. Ang ano lang, kaya natawag ng first quarter storm dahil sa 3 unang buwan ng 1970, yun yung pinakamatindi. Pero tuloy-tuloy na ano yun, hanggang sa dumating yung punto na nagdeklara ng martial law ang gobyerno.
So mga college days ako noon nung napasama ako sa mga rally. Doon sa Makibaka, siyempre, ang kaibahan niya sa ibang mga organisasyong pangmasa, ito ay kumakatawan hindi lamang para sa mga kababaihan, kundi para sa kanilang mga karapatan. Lalong-lalo na po nung panahon na yon, napakatindi ng pang-aapi at pang-aabuso sa kababaihan, pero walang nagsasalita para dito. Siyempre, sumama na kami sa mga rallies. Siyempre, andun na rin yung unang kauna-unahan na marchang pangkababaihan noong March 8, 1971. Napasali ako sa mas malawakan pang mass movement nang magkaroon ng gulo sa noong Mayo 1 sa harapan ng Kongreso kung saan isa ako sa mga participants. Ang totoo nga po noon, ang isang babaeng manggagawa na si Lisa Balando ay nabaril habang katabi ko doon sa gitna ng kalye. sa may tapat ng Kongreso. Sumali na rin ako sa mga picket areas o nakisimpatya sa mga ng maraming mga mass actions kung saan ay naging aktibong participants o kasali ang mga makibaka. Ideklara ang martial law, ang masakit nito, siyempre kaming mga makibaka o isa ang makibaka sa mga naging diniklarang iligal ng diktador na si Marcos, kasama ng Kabataang Makabayan at Samahan ng Demokratikong Kabataan. Nang hindi na ako tuluyang makakilo sa mga syudad, at dahil nga din sa tindi ng paghahanapan ng batas ng mga military, napilitan po ako na sumapi sa armadong pakikibaka ng mga 1974.
As the decade ended, iron-fisted rule was a manifest failure. Illegalized organizations were revived and new ones were formed. Workers defied edicts and launched strikes. Peasants clamored for land as loudly as before. Rebellion gained strength, fueled no less by abuse and neglect. The streets were choked with protests that panicked the dictatorship.
Siguro mga late 60s as a eventual influence pa rin ng Vatican II, ang simbahang Katoliko, dahil nga noon seminarista ako tapos naging pare, ay pananawagan na tatandaan ko sa isang rural conference, the church should go to the barrios. Saka nag-iisip rin na tumulong sa mga mahihirap. Kombinasyon na yun ng malasakit sa kanila, pero partly reactionary na baka tumataas ang aktivismo ay maiwan ang simbahan. Ang iba sa amin, naging chaplain ng Federation of Free Farmers para sa land reform. Nagsimula rin ang organizing sa mga komunidad, tulad sa Tondo. Merong nag-organize ng mga manggagawa. At ito, nagkaroon rin ng tinatawag namin bagong ekumenismo, yung nagtutulungan ang Katoliko at Protestante, hindi lamang sa dasal, hindi lamang sa liturhiya, kundi sa kanyang para bagang tawag sa teolohiya ay preferential option for the poor. Para bagang mahal ng Diyos lahat, pero may special na pagkiling sa mahirap. So gano'n rin, ang simbahan naglilingkod sa lahat, mayaman man o mahirap, pero dapat may special na pagkiling sa mahirap. Pero sa halip na maawa lamang, parang magpagkawang gawa, ang ideya nun is tulungan ang mga mahirap mismo mag-organisa, mamulat, at isulong ang kanilang karapatan sa harap ng gobyerno.
What martial law tried to prevent became a reality that demanded a confrontation. The 70s ushered a new decade that defined the society at its lowest point, but also at its most glorious moment. The showdown loomed in the horizon as the 1980s began. An anti-dictatorship movement drew strength from a previously silent middle class and the clamorous poor. Rebellion raged in the countryside, while nervous capital fled in droves.
Tie a yellow ribbon round the old oak tree. It's been
but all planes are being guarded, and they may close the airport on Sunday or turn back the planes if they would be able to pinpoint which one I'm coming in. Yeah. The third one, and this is the real easy, they have two guys stationed to knock me out of the airport, and they will try them for murder. They'll convict them, but they have assurances.
a snap election, perhaps earlier than 8 months.
Midpoint in the decade, the dictatorship ended, replaced by burning hope. The 1980s seemed to be the decade that would finally give birth to a nation dreamed of a century before.
Di na ko papayag, mawala ka muli. Di na...
The biggest thing that happened in terms of human rights sa Pilipinas nung si Cory ay nag-take over ay ang unang-una ang pagpapalaya sa mga political prisoners. That's really something. That's really something. Kasi pinalaya lahat eh.
The peace movement and the peace process was definitely a product of EDSA. As we know, the armed conflict had actually intensified under martial law. When the dictatorship was peacefully ousted, one of the first acts of President Aquino was to call for peace talks with the different armed groups that had been fighting the dictatorship. We know that the peace talks broke down with the Mendiola massacre.
Ang EDSA Revolution ay hindi naman talaga nagkaroon ng overhaul ng militar, hindi naman talaga nagkaroon ng pagparusa sa mga lumabag sa karapatang pantao ng batas militar sapagkat sila ay nakasama sa EDSA Revolution. Kamukha ng ilang opisyales ng RAM, bagamat sila ay sangkot sa pagkapahirap sa mga torture ng martial law, sila ay nagkaroon pa ng mga posisyon sa gobyerno. So sila ay hindi naparusahan. At dahil diyan yung naitayo na bagong pamahalaan sa ilalim ni Presidente Cory Aquino na nakapailalim sa bagong konstitusyon, yung Freedom Constitution, ay masasabi nating isang kompromiso, isang koalisyon ng iba't ibang puwersa na lumahok sa EDSA at nagpabagsak kay Marcos. So, yan ang dahilan kung bakit may mga pagtatangka na ibalik ang dating rehimen, ibalik ang dating masabi nating panahon ni Marcos sa pamamagitan noong mga rightist na nagdaos o nagtangka ng kudeta. At iyan ang dahilan kung bakit naabala si dating Pangulong Cory Aquino sa mahabang panahon kung paano pananatilihin ang demokratikong pamamahala sa Pilipinas.
Unfortunately, merong hindi nagawa at ito ay ang pag-orient sa state security forces, sa government agencies involved sa human rights, doon sa pagbabago ng pananaw sa critics ng government.
Of course, on the ground, we had the Mendiola massacre in 1987, which was really not expected, considering that it is in the Aquino administration where the comprehensive agrarian reform was supposed to be in place. The Mendiola massacre will never be forgotten. I was there. Hindi ko talaga malimutan yun. Dahil we were in the front because in terms of a defense line, a negotiating panel vis-a-vis the military on the other side of the barbed wire. When suddenly, gunshots. Talagang, I thought that was also the end of me at that time. We did not know where to run to. And when we brought this to the President, unfortunately, I think by that time, Corazon Aquino as the President was no longer in control.
Again, CARP was actually a compromise among contending forces. Even after EDSA, we know the landowning classes were still very strong. In fact, Cory Hersat was the representative of the landowning classes. But there was a momentum of the farmers move, of the peasant movement at that time. So yung landowning classes did not even have to do anything about CARP. They simply used the loopholes of it to delay it for 10, 20 years. Delay it, in fact, forever.
The Corazon Aquino government was a promise unfulfilled. It created a new set of plunderers and human rights violators as it failed to prosecute old ones. It failed to win a power-hungry armed forces from politics, and it allowed the military its war against its people. Body counts rising, it was as if martial law never ended. The President marched under a pouring rain, begging the Senate to extend the unwelcome stay of a foreign armed force that considered the Philippines its offshore playground. Thus was the Aquino government preserved in photographs as it ended with a whimper. And the decade rolled on with the soldier on top. Defying odds and defying belief, martial law's chief implementer, former Constabulary Chief Fidel Ramos, became president. Under a barrage of economic slogans, civilian bureaucracy was stealthily militarized. Meanwhile, journalists were still being killed, activists summarily executed. In the midst of trumped-up economic development, human rights were still being trampled upon.
Ang masasabi ko sa 90s, siyempre ang parang mantra nun ni Ramos ay Philippines 2000. Parang in-emphasize niya yung growth, global competitiveness. Pero to his credit, binanggit rin niya panimula yung social agenda, yung people's empowerment. At kaya nung panahon ng 92, doon nagsimulang mag-engage kahit mga NGOs sa DAR, sa iba pa. Parang ideya, yung promise ng EDSA na hindi sapat ang gobyerno, kundi dapat ang mamamayan ay makipagtulungan, bumatikos kung kailangan bumatikos. Pero kung kaya makipagtulungan, bakit hindi? Marami pa bang violations nangyari sa human rights? Meron pa rin, pero sabay-sabay eh. Yung meron nangyayaring mabuti, meron nangyayaring hindi ganun mabuti. At yung ambivalence na yon, no? May liwanag at dilim, nagpatuloy yon sa buong 90s.
Yung pananaw na kapag ka kaliwa o kapag ka komunista ay hindi entitled sa human rights. Ay, naranasan ko yan eh. Martial law, 1994, naranasan ko yan. 1994, si Fidel Ramos na ang presidente. Pero nung hinuli kami sa Benguet, ganun din. We asked for the arrest warrant, wala, tinawanan lang kami. After nang hulihin kami, itinali kami, piniringan, hindi kami dinala sa detention center. dinala kami sa motel. At sa motel kami in-interrogate at tinorture. That was 1994. May continuity yung karanasan ko nung 74 at saka 94. And I think the security forces, state security forces who did that, ang akala nila, ginagawa nila ang kanilang tungkulin para pangalagaan ang gobyerno at ang estado.
The presidency or the administration, the Ramos administration brought in so-called progress in the economic side. The total war policy that was declared right after Menjola massacre continued. And this brought in thousands of victims, this time internally displaced persons because of the conflicts of the total war, the victims of total war during the Ramos administration. I remember at that time I was already the executive director of the task force detainees. And whenever I go to the evacuation centers where the IDPs are brought, supposed to be in safety. No? We went to Davao, to Zamboanga, to all these places. And of course, the Marag Valley. All these things, those were also terrible years. When you are in the human rights advocacy and promotion, your life is not safe. It's always at risk. Perhaps for us who were still respected as religious, in a way, we found safety in the presence of God. But for the poor farmers, urban poor, and all the rest, the marginalized, the victims, no? They are the ones who are so vulnerable and most often the victimized.
Well, ang nagkaroon ng split sa Communist Party of the Philippines noong 1993 at yung split na yan ay naging tinawag na split sa pagitan ng reaffirmists at saka rejectionists. Ang mga reaffirmists o RAs, sila yung nagpatuloy pa ngayon ng Communist Party of the Philippines, NDF, NPA, at yan ay on the basis of reaffirmation ng Mao Zedong thought. Yun namang mga umalis, nag-split, they call themselves, iba-ibang grupo yan pero tinawag nila yung sarili nila na rejectionists because they're rejecting yung mga Maoist ideas, yung mga dati na. So, nagbuo ng iba-ibang grupo yan. So, mula noong 1993 hanggang ngayon, sa matagal na panahon, nagsikap yung mga umalis, rejectionists na magbuo magkaisa ulit, magbuo ng sariling grupo, but unfortunately, hanggang ngayon, hiwa-hiwala yan. Ang nanatiling isang bloke ay yung inalisan, yung Communist Party of the Philippines, CPP.
A popular actor specializing in hooligan roles was elected president. True to his film characters, he made war with the Bangsamoro by day and drank, gambled, and womanized by night. As the new millennium began, it seemed the country reverted to chaos and uproar of 2 decades past. Thus ended a decade that could have realized the promise of a society reborn. The people were in EDSA in droves once again. If it was the new millennium, the only indication were overhead motor bridges and trains. If it was anti-dictatorship in 1986, it was anti-presidential hooliganism and corruption in 2000 and 2001. The failure of those bestowed power in decades past to change Philippine society coagulated into an orgy of killings, abductions, and torture. Its legitimacy questioned and desperate to protect its hold to power, the Arroyo government unleashed the campaign against its people that rivaled martial law in spite and malice. Before the decade reached midpoint, the number of journalists killed since 1986 reached more than 100. Victims of extrajudicial killings reached 1,000. Hundreds were forcibly disappeared, while political prisoners piled up in jails. The countryside was filled with cries for justice, while the most rabid military officers were promoted and praised to high heavens for doing their job well. The martial law tragedy played all over again.
Ang kaibahan ng EDSA 1 sa EDSA 2, ang EDSA 1 it's against the dictatorship, di ba? It's against Marcos, the dictatorship of Marcos. Ang EDSA 2 it's against a corrupt president, si Erap. Tagumpay ng EDSA 2, nanalo yan, napaalis si Erap, but ang naging problema sa EDSA 2, ang umupo ay isa pa ring corrupt na presidente, and it was proven immediately after makaupo si Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. Ang isa sa pinakamatinding gobyerno when it comes to corruption, human rights abuses, comparable to the Marcos regime, ito ng Gloria. Ang sinasabi pa nga ng iba, mas matindi. At ang isa pa rin kay Gloria na talagang maliwanag na maliwanag, hindi lang yung corruption, hindi lang yung human rights violations, hindi lang yung mga pagpatay, kundi yung mismong kanyang ginawang pagnanakaw ng boto sa eleksyon. At saka alam naman natin sa panahon ni Gloria, Gloria supported General Palparan na hanggang ngayon ay nagtatago dahil sa mga human rights abuses na ginawa niya, pagkidnap, pagpatay.
No 2007 nawala si Jonas. Pero nung nawala si Jonas, wala na si Joe. Hindi ko naman gustong isa sa mga anak ko na naman ang isunod. So I had to be the spokesperson of the family. Hanggang ngayon, tulad nito, may bagong pangyayari naman. Akala ko tahimik na ako. Ayan, si Anyo, sinare na ISAF chief. Hindi pwedeng hindi ako magsalita. Kasi siya, isa sa mga main respondents namin. The family and the lawyers believe, because of what we see in the evidence and what we know, that he had a direct hand in the abduction of my son. Nung martial law, ang dami ng oppressive measures, no? Hindi makapagsalita ang tao, natatakot. Hanggang ngayon, tuloy-tuloy pa rin ang pagdukot. Tuloy-tuloy pa rin ang extrajudicial killings. Sinasawalang bahala nitong mga perpetrators yung batas. No? Ang pwede kong maging mensahe is we still have to be vigilant. No? We still have to protect our rights. Hahayaan na lang ba natin na tuloy-tuloy na sapilitan pagdukot at pinapatay na lang ang mga pinaghihinalaan pa lang na na mga kontra sa gobyerno?
Ang Freedom from Death Coalition ay inanak ng isang napakalaking problemang nilikha ng martial law o ng Marcos dictatorship. At yan ay ang napakalaking foreign debt. Katunayan, noong 1962, ang utang ng bansa ay $360 million. Nang bumagsak si Marcos o matapos ang martial law, ang utang natin ay $28.3 billion. Almost 8 times. Saan napunta yan? Ngayon ko itatanong, ano nangyari mula nung bumagsak si Marcos hanggang itong taong ito, 2012, kung saan mga sunod-sunod na administrasyon ang pumalit, no? Mrs. Aquino, Mr. Ramos, Mr. Estrada, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, at ngayon ay si Presidente Noynoy Aquino, no? Kung utang ang pag-uusapan at external debt, lumaki panlalo. Kung 28.3 billion noong 1986, yan ay umabot na ng $62.5 billion nung kalahating taon ng 2012. Ibig sabihin, halos nag-times 3 pa.
So impunity is still there, nananatili yan kasi wala namang nakukulong, wala namang nabibigyan ng hustisya, kahit naman yung sa Maguindanao hanggang ngayon ay nananatili pa. So it's the same thing all over again.
Bilang isang human rights advocate ay nalulungkot ako sa patuloy na hindi pagresolba ng mga seryosong mga kaso ng paglabag sa karapatang pantao, lalo na yung mga pagpaslang, pagdukot. No? May isang factor dito na babanggit ko na sa bisa ng EDSA People Power Want kung tawagin, EDSA Revolution, yung dalawang pangunahing implementor ng martial law, si Juan Ponce Enrile at si Fidel Ramos, naging hero sila, naging leader din sila ng Armed Forces and Defense sa ilalim ni Cory Aquino. At yung hindi na isagawa, yung pagre-reform, pag-weed out ng mga human rights violators sa Armed Forces of the Philippines, at kaya yun nakatulong na malaki sa pagpapatuloy yung trend ng human rights violations. Kaya lang sa ilalim ng Pinoy, na sobra ang kanyang emphasis dun sa anti-corruption, na kulang ng pansin sa human rights violation.
Steeled by past defeats, victories, and struggles, a people rose to defy an oppressive government. Never again became a battle cry, and the state was forced to back down somewhat, somehow. In an election that ended the decade, it rejected a dispensation that represented only the horrors and none of the hopes of the past. Desperate to regain a promise lost, the people waxed wistful about the death of Corazon Aquino and propelled her son to the presidency to fulfill that which remained unrealized. Despite sincere efforts of President Benigno Aquino III, many perpetrators remain unpunished. But while human rights violations continue, the Filipino people's indomitable spirit yet rises, and the struggle continues.